Today's video is going to facilitate you to become a great servant. Before you judge or come up with conclusions of what the content of today's video is, stay tuned to find out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Evolving Consciousness. I'm your host Purushottam, and in today's video, we are going to talk about the power of servitude. When we generally hear this word servant, right, we are taken aback. There's a lot of concocted and a lot of crippled understanding, a crippled meaning which we derive from this word called servant. But what if I told you the greatest leaders mankind has ever witnessed were the greatest servants? Now let's understand the word servant. At the root of the word servant comes the word service. The tragedy of our human population is we have been so much influenced by the Western culture that we have forgotten our roots. Servitude is not something to look down upon, but it is probably the highest virtue one can sort of emanate, one can epitomize. This is one of the highest virtue one can have. Now, this is not which is coming out of my thoughts. This is coming from the world's greatest philosophers, thinkers, intellectuals. I would like to quote what Swami Vivekananda, who is considered to be the national youth icon and on whose birthday the National Youth Day is being celebrated even today in India. He said, and I quote, "He who is servant of all is the true master. He never becomes a leader in whose love there is consideration of high or low. He whose love knows no end and never stops to consider high or low has the whole world lying at his feet." Now, this is something very interesting, and now I would like to bring about the story of the greatest servant mankind has ever seen. Now, you probably are thinking, who am I going to talk about? I'm going to be talking about the person, the personality, the supreme personality of Godhead, which the whole world worships. Even if they don't worship, they would have heard about him in some form or the other. I'm talking about Lord Krishna himself. Now, some of you would have been taken aback completely. What am I saying? Am I saying that Lord Krishna is the greatest servant? Now, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which consists of nectar of different pastimes of Lord Krishna, there are countless pastimes wherein the Lord showcased this power, his humility in becoming the servant of his devotees. One such story is of the story of his dear friend Sudama. Probably some of you don't even know about Sudama. This is the unfortunate part of our Indian population. We know a lot about the Mughal history, but we don't know about our own culture. Sudama is known to be a great friend, a very close friend of Lord Krishna. And when Lord Krishna was coronated to be the majestic king of his kingdom Dwarka, Sudama was a very poor Brahmin who lived in a very not such a good atmosphere, right? He was living in absolutely impoverished and downtrodden surroundings, environment. He was living a very poor life. One fine day, the wife of Sudama says to him that Krishna is your dear friend. He's such an opulent king. Why don't you just go and ask him for help? Sudama, being a shy person by nature, he has a lot of contradictions within himself because he feels that it won't be a good thing to go and ask a friend a material favor, right? Probably we also have this kind of a psychological battle which happens within us. But the wife really convinced because they were living in very pathetic conditions from an economic standpoint. So Sudama decides one fine day, okay, let me go and visit my friend Lord Krishna. And when Sudama enters the majestic kingdom, the majestic palace where Lord Krishna was the king, it so happens that he sees this view where there are all servants around and Lord Krishna is seated in his majestic throne. And when Lord Krishna notices that Sudama is approaching, he immediately is alert and he goes to receive his friend. And do you know what happens after that? You will be absolutely spellbound if you hear what happens next. Sudama is given a seat, and Lord Krishna washes his feet with sandalwood paste and completely makes him comfortable and washes his feet. Just imagine the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Divinity Himself, is washing the feet of his friend. Now, Sudama, when he witnesses this, he's in absolute awe because there was a lot of closeness, there was a lot of intimacy from a friendship standpoint which was there between Sudama and Lord Krishna. And because of that, because of his ecstasy which he felt, he absolutely forgot the very reason he had come to the palace. And in Indian culture, whenever a guest visits any other person, they don't go empty handed. There is something which they take with them. So Sudama had thought, I am such a poor person, what can I give to Lord Krishna, who is such a majestic king, who is surrounded with all the lavish opulences. But still, hesitatingly, he had taken certain puffed rice with him, certain amount of puffed rice with him. But when he sees Krishna and his opulence, he is very much hesitant because he is a king. What would he think if I give him this? Lord Krishna, as he is so intuitive, he understands the mental dilemma which Sudama is going through. And he immediately asks him, my dear Sudama, what are you hiding? I want to see that. Then Sudama hesitatingly removes that puffed rice. And when Lord Krishna looks at it, he immediately takes the puffed rice and stuffs it in his mouth. And he says, wow, this is so delicious. Now, this is how the divinity, this is the reason why Lord Krishna is so loved and revered. Look at the amount of respect and love he had towards his devotees. And when Sudama witnessed this, he was completely consumed in the loving presence of God, completely consumed in the loving presence of his friend, Lord Krishna. Of course, at that point of time, he didn't know that he was God himself. It was just a relationship of a friend with a friend. Now, Sudama had completely forgotten about what he wanted. I mean, the reason he came to the palace, he had forgotten that. And after a couple of friendly conversations, interactions, Sudama leaves the palace. And when Sudama is walking back to his home, he suddenly realizes the reason why I had gone to the palace, I didn't even ask Lord Krishna about this. And my wife is going to be infuriated with anger and say, why the hell did you go if you just had to go and just have this casual conversation? And when Sudama approaches his house, he suddenly notices that his house is no longer there. Instead, he sees a majestic palace, and his wife is coming out of the palace to receive him in well-dressed attire. Now Sudama is absolutely perplexed. He's baffled, he's amazed. What the hell did happen? Now the reason I shared this story is because oftentimes we have a very crippled understanding of what love is and what friendship is. Let's understand that Sudama went to Lord Krishna and he didn't have any kind of he had an expectation, but when he looked at Lord Krishna, he completely forgot about it. But did Lord Krishna, didn't take care of him? Of course, he's the all-knowing Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's everything. He knows everything. All the inner battles, he's very much aware of that. The point I'm trying to drive here, and the central theme of this video, is the great leaders, whether they're Lord Krishna himself or the people who are at leadership titles, even in today's time, whether it's Narendra Modi, they all understand that being a servant is essentially becoming the greatest leader. Oftentimes, we have a very crippled understanding of this word servant. We look down upon this word servant, but we don't understand the root philosophy, the root thought process behind this. And when we have this intention of serving others, now let's understand, we all are human mortals. And Lord Krishna, through his entire life, he gave startling examples for human beings to follow. Essentially, what he showcased was that when it comes to focusing on relationships, you should always have this intention of serving. But the materially conditioned mind won't understand this. For them, it's all a tit for tat game. Why did Lord Krishna have to go and wash the feet of a poor Brahmin? He didn't think, I am the God. Why should I be a servant at his feet? Now, another pastime. Now, this is about Vidur. Now, probably people who know about Mahabharata know who Vidur is. For the other audience who are sort of uneducated about the different nuances of the characters of Mahabharata, Vidur can be considered the prime minister of the Kuru kingdom. Now, it so happens that Lord Krishna was passing through the house of Vidur, and he suddenly visits the house, Vidur's house, and it so happens that Vidur is not available at the time when Lord Krishna visits him. But his wife was available, and he says, Vidurani, I am very hungry, can you provide me something? So Vidurani brings up a pile of bananas to sort of give to Lord Krishna. And funnily enough, when she's peeling the bananas, when she is looking at Lord Krishna, she's completely lost because Lord Krishna's demeanor was absolutely captivating. And when she was peeling the bananas, she used to throw the bananas and give Lord Krishna the peels. What do you think, Lord Krishna? If it were you and me, we would have complained, what the hell, why are you giving me peels? Give me the bananas. But do you know what Lord Krishna did? Instead, he consumes the banana peels without giving any kind of an insight or without any expression of discomfort. This is what true love is. When we look at Lord Krishna, it won't be an overstatement to say that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the personification of the highest level of love. Not the love of today's world, right? Where it's all based on business transactions. Lord Krishna could have told Vidurani, why are you giving me banana peels? But Lord Krishna accepts that. In life, oftentimes, when we get things which don't match our understanding, our definition of what is the right love or the wrong love, we often tend to sort of reject it. It's very rightly said that human beings are incapable of this virtue called unconditional love. Human beings simply cannot have unconditional love. Now, this is not to demean the human interactions or the human bond, the human camaraderie which exists in different relationships. This is not to talk about demeaning them. Essentially, the point I'm trying to drive is the number one frustration in relationships is because when we expect that the other person would be perceiving our love in high regard, you might be giving the person the best of love. But the other person might perceive your love as limited. Now, the problem is not in your love. The problem is in the perception of that person. His senses are limited. His senses are heavily conditioned because of his childhood programming, because of the society's programming, because of the different stories that person has, which kind of gives him a definition of what love is. If that definition of love is not finding a fit in your expression, that will be termed as limited. But that doesn't mean that you are at fault. It only means that the perception of the other person is at fault. The reason I brought about this point here is it's a foolish desire to expect recognition of any kind of unconditional love activity. And it's a foolish thing to even expect that. Our senses, the senses of human being, is heavily conditioned. What we perceive as limited, only the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Krishna, can understand the true intentions and the true feelings of a human being. Other human beings are completely conditioned. Their senses are absolutely conditioned, and they look at the world and they look at your expression of love through the prism of their conditioning. Just look at Vidurani's intent. Lord Krishna sensed that. And this is a reason why there are billions of devotees who sort of engage themselves in the bhakti of Lord Krishna. And it is said that no matter what you might consider the definition of soulmate, essentially every soul's soulmate is the Lord Himself. You can have this fantasy storylines, the Bollywood, Hollywood storylines, and it's not to sort of demean that relationship, but essentially it is to glorify the highest relationship which every soul has in this planet, the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, one very interesting thing, right? Oftentimes we get frustrated in relationships because we think the other person never understood the kind of feeling, the gravity of feelings we had for them. But one thing you need to realize, we live in a world where people don't even acknowledge the love of God for us. Now you might be thinking, what is the palpable evidence for love of God for us? What is the palpable evidence for the unconditional element in God's love? I want to ask you this. The sun which we witness every day, right? The sun doesn't say that I'll only give sunlight to the good person, right? I will sort of isolate the sunlight from sinners and bad people. It doesn't do that. It unconditionally gives sunlight to everyone. Now, this is the true essence of love. This is the true essence of service. Another instance in Lord Krishna's life, when the battle of Mahabharata was happening, what do you think Lord Krishna's role was? He was the driver of Arjuna. So, understand this. Lord Krishna has showcased in his complete life how humble he was. Though he was the God, but he gave us startling examples of how we all need to conduct ourselves. Most of us, if we have certain achievements in life, we suddenly start becoming filled with the sense of inflated ego. But look at Lord Krishna, how he conducted himself. Also, a very real life story of Srila Prabhupada, which I would like to narrate here. When Srila Prabhupada had gone to the United States, one of the journalists comes and tells Prabhupada, Swamiji, every week we have a godman from India. India is like a factory of creating gods and godmans. Every week there's a god released from India to United States. Then Srila Prabhupada gives a witty reply to this journalist. He says, I am not God. I am the servant of God. Oh, let me correct that again. I'm not even the servant of God. I'm trying to be the servant of God. Now, this is true. This is a true personality. This is a true leader. Because he never, and one distinguishing quality of Srila Prabhupada is, he never created followers. You might find people, you might find gurus who have this self-propagating agenda wherein they create a lot of followers. But Srila Prabhupada always focused on the message of Bhagavad Gita. He always focused on the power of Lord Krishna's pastimes. And as a result of that, instead of creating followers, he created leaders, he created influencers. The reason I am giving so much importance to the life and times of Lord Krishna is, probably Lord Krishna is the manifestation of everything which we can even comprehend and think. The things which you cannot even imagine, all the virtues, the divinities, he's called a Purna Avatar. A Purna Avatar, as per the scriptures, is an embodiment of all the virtues you can even think, and probably which are beyond your thinking perception. And servitude is such a powerful game changer. Once we have this attitude of service, people will naturally gravitate, because it's also found in probably servant leadership is sort of one of those defining leadership styles which has produced one of the most powerful leaders. Whether it's Narendra Modi of today's time, Swami Vivekananda emphasized heavily on the notion of servant leadership. Because a powerful leader can only be a powerful leader when he is a true servant. And Lord Krishna's life is a startling example which sort of gives us a lot of inspiration to harbor this power of servitude. And next time when you hear the word servant, don't consider it as a low class quality. The service, the virtue of service is a divine manifestation, is a divine quality which even Lord Krishna heavily focused on, and he epitomized that quality. Hence, it's very important to have this power, this understand the power and gravity of this service mentality. Now, you might be thinking that I don't probably work in a particular setup where I can serve. Probably you're not right. Probably you're not viewing the particular aspect of the right lens. So I will talk about myself, right? I work in a company called General Electric, whose main agenda is to make the world more green, more renewable. I find a tremendous sense of purpose in sort of endeavoring this, because it's a noble profession. Because we are going to prevent pollution, we are going to make the planet more green, and we are going to reduce the carbon footprint. Isn't this an act of service? Any activity, no matter how different it might be, you might always approach it through this faculty of servitude, to this emotion of servitude. And the more this emotion becomes a part of our natural consciousness, becomes a part of our default setting, bliss follows. Because understand this, I talked about this in one of my previous videos. Probably the second highest level of happiness is when you are serving someone, and that serving doesn't have any expectations. That serving is coming from a pure, unconditional heart. I hope my today's video brought a lot of clarity and brought a lot of depth in understanding this word called servant. Because oftentimes we have a very crippled understanding of the word servant. I am really grateful for your time on my video, and I would also encourage and humbly request that please go through the great pastimes of Lord Krishna. Now, some of you might have this thought process that all this is mythology. Now, I won't argue with you, because there are palpable evidences today, and there is a new book which has sort of epitomized, has sort of proven the fact that Mahabharata was a real thing. It's not mythology, it's not imagination. Now, even if it's an imagination, let us assume that. Now, this happened with Srila Prabhupada. One of the foreigners asked Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, you keep talking about Krishna, 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 right? What if, after the end of our life, we realize that Krishna is a figment of our imagination? That probably such a personality never existed. Now, Prabhupada gives a very befitting reply to this foreigner. He says, okay, fine, maybe Lord Krishna doesn't exist. But look at the way we have conducting ourselves. It was said that Hare Krishna people are the most happy and the most exuberant people. Have you ever heard of a spiritualist commit suicide? No, right? But you have heard Bollywood celebrities commit suicide. Now, isn't this an absolute irony? Isn't this something which cannot be understood? Because most of us, what we think, right? The main purpose of life is to enjoy as much as possible. The main purpose, the reason we acquire wealth, the reason we do anything is to enjoy. But the people in Bollywood, the people in Hollywood, they had everything which you and me can even imagine or perceive. They had all resources at their disposal to enjoy. But why did they commit suicide? Now, this real life incidence tells us something deep about life. Enjoyment is not the purpose of life. Enjoyment is a very small part of a larger life. Life can be made meaningful through a rightful purpose. And this is talked about extensively in the holy text of Bhagavad Gita. But some of us want to confine ourselves to the lower faculties of happiness, and the only purpose of their life is enjoying. But when we cultivate a higher taste, when we have a higher taste, that probably is even more blissful and more pleasurable than these lower tastes. And the reason why these film stars, right, the people who had everything at their disposal commit suicide is, they realize that the more they try to exploit their senses for enjoyment, it's not happening. The more they need. And this sort of brings me to this point of developing a higher taste. Now, higher taste can also be through the power of service. No matter what state of life you are in, right? Some of us might think that I'm not significant enough to serve someone. But no matter what walk of life you belong to, you certainly are useful, and you can create this impact in anyone's life. Through the smallest gestures, through the seemingly insignificant gestures, we can create even a 1% help to someone. That feeling, that attitude of service, that's unstoppable. Thank you so much for your time on my video, and also don't forget to share this content, because most of us are very uneducated about the rich culture of our land. So it's very important to sort of spread this knowledge so that they can benefit out of it. Thank you so much, and do subscribe to my channel if you are enjoying the genre of the content. Also give me your valuable feedback in the comment section. Thank you so much, and I'll meet you in the next video.